and today I'm going to be talking about the Flutter Toolkit and the advantages that it provides to us as developers when it comes to cross-platform development. So, what's cross-platform development and why should we care? Well, not too long ago, most complex digital systems could only be accessed via computers, but obviously that's changing. The 2018 census data showed that 84% of households had a smartphone, 78% had desktops or laptops, and 63% had tablets. All three of these devices look and function completely differently, but end users are going to have the expectations that they can access our services from whichever device they happen to be on. As developers, it's our job to make that happen. But the problem that arises here is the fact that developing systems across different systems is complex. Android apps are predominantly built using Java and Android Studio, while iOS applications are developed using Swift and Xcode. These two tools aren't compatible, and this leads to developers needing to develop and maintain both an Android application and an iOS application. And this is where tools like Flutter come in. Flutter is an open source development toolkit that was developed by Google, and they still actively maintain it. And what Flutter does is it allows developers to create cross-platform projects that use a single code base. This means that as a developer, after writing your code once, you can deploy it to several platforms. This includes both Android and iOS, and outside of mobile development, the same application could be shipped out as a web app. And seeing as different browsers function relatively similarly, this means that your web app could be accessed by people browsing the internet on Chrome on their computers, people on Safari on their phones, and currently Flutter is working on allowing developers to develop their applications for native desktop apps, but there's no stable release for this feature quite yet. So when we're developing in Flutter, the programming language that we end up using is Dart. Dart, like Flutter, is something that Google created. Initially, it was created with the intention of being used to develop web applications, but now it's used across various different platforms. In the case that it's being used to develop web apps, Dart can be compiled into JavaScript, and when we're working with native application, binaries can be generated. There was a focus when they were developing Dart on ease of use. So they followed this very familiar C-like syntax that anyone that's worked with Java, JavaScript, or any of the C languages has seen before, which makes adopting it a little easier. And the language itself is object-oriented, so people who have experience with Java can come in and a lot of the skills that they have can be applied here. So what are the benefits of using Flutter? One of the biggest benefits is only having to maintain one project. Only having one system to maintain reduces the cognitive load on developers and the overall cost of the system. Flutter can be a great tool in cases where a product needs to be quickly shipped across multiple platforms, like you have an MVP that you just need to push out. Similarly, since Dart's the only language that's being used, developers have a shared understanding of the system. There's no language gaps to say. And Flutter itself wraps Dart, and it provides a set of libraries that can be used to more easily build UI components. Specifically, they use Material, which is a collection of components that are pre-built, and what this does is it reduces the amount of time that developers have to spend building these components since they're already pre-built and tested and functional. So, yep. But on the flip side, there are some downsides to using Flutter. The main one being that you're locked into Google's ecosystem. Transitioning from a Flutter application to something that is a native iOS application would be difficult. You'd have to completely rewrite your application in a different language in order to move out of the Flutter ecosystem. Another thing that stands out is just the limited support for device-specific hardware. That being that some things you might need to develop using more native programming languages like Swift in order to access certain features. And the fact that Flutter is relatively new. it has only been around for about 4 years. So the community is small and getting resources for it can be difficult. So where is Flutter used? So obviously Google uses Flutter. They use it in their Google Home Hub, and that's a good example of them using it within an embedded system. They use it for their display. The Stadia mobile applications are also built using Flutter. BMW, they have a application that allows people to monitor their vehicles, and that application itself is built using Flutter. And Philips, their HueSync app, which allows people to control their bulbs and their other smart Philips devices, is also built using Flutter. All right, thank you.